Tonight I want to take you somewhere that exists between the tick and the tock of a clock, between one heartbeat and the next, in that strange and delicate space where time itself plays its most mysterious game. We're going to explore something that might unsettle you at first, but I promise, by the end of our journey together, you'll find a deep peace in understanding why we can never truly see the present moment. As you settle in wherever you are right now, perhaps in your bed, maybe on a couch, or somewhere else entirely, I wonder where in the world you might be listening from. Is it late at night where you are? Early morning perhaps? Whatever time zone cradles you right now, know that we're sharing this moment together, even as that moment slips away into something else. And if you find comfort in these gentle explorations of the cosmos and its mysteries, perhaps you'd like to follow along for more of these sleepy journeys into the unknown. A simple like or subscribe helps others find these peaceful spaces too, but for now, just relax and let yourself drift with me into this peculiar puzzle of perception. You see, there's something deeply strange about this very instant, the one you're experiencing right now as you hear these words. It's a question that might sound strange at first, something you could easily dismiss as philosophical wordplay, but the more we look at it, the more quietly intriguing it becomes. What if I told you that everything you see, everything you touch, everything you experience is already in the past by the time your brain process sees it? What if the present moment was not just elusive, but fundamentally impossible for us to capture? What if this disturbing reality was actually our gentle invitation to understand consciousness and time in a completely new way? We think we live in the now, don't we? We believe our eyes show us what's happening right this second, that our fingers touch objects as they exist in this precise instant. But physics tells us something different, something both unsettling and oddly beautiful. Every signal, every photon of light, every nerve impulse takes time to travel. Light moves fast, incredibly fast, but not infinitely fast, and in those tiny fractions of seconds, those milliseconds and nanoseconds that seem too small to matter, the universe has already moved on. The present moment you think you're experiencing has already become the past. Think about the stars above us right now, even if you can't see them. That light from the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, left its surface over 4 years ago. When you look at the night sky, you're literally looking back in time. The moon you might see tonight, you're seeing it as it was about 1.25 seconds ago. Even the sun, our own star, shows itself to us as it existed 8 minutes in the past. But here's where it gets even stranger and perhaps more intimate. The person sitting across from you at dinner, the friend you're talking to, even your own hand held up in front of your face, you're seeing them all in the past too. Light needs time to travel from your hand to your eye. It's fast, so fast that we can barely conceive of it, moving at 292, 458 meters per second. But it's not instantaneous. That hand you're looking at? You're seeing it as it was about 1 nanosecond ago. That might seem negligible, meaningless even, but it's not just about the light. Your brain needs time too, much more time actually, to process what your eyes detect. Scientists have measured this carefully, and they've found something remarkable. It takes your brain anywhere from 80 to 100 milliseconds to construct the image you think you're seeing right now. That's 1/10 of a second, an eternity in the life of the universe. Consider what happens when you see something. Light bounces off an object and enters your eye. It passes through your cornea, your lens, and strikes your retina where millions of photoreceptor cells convert those photons into electrical signals. These signals travel along your optic nerve, making their way to the visual cortex at the back of your brain. But they don't just arrive and instantly become vision. No, your brain must decode them, interpret them, fill in the gaps where your blind spot exists, combine the images from both eyes, add depth perception, recognize patterns, identify objects, and finally, present you with what you call sight. All of this takes time, and during that time, the universe has moved on. The object you're looking at has continued existing, atoms vibrating, electrons orbiting, time flowing forward. By the time your conscious mind receives the processed image, registers it, and forms a thought about it, even more time has passed. We're talking about perhaps 150 to 200 milliseconds total, sometimes more. In that 1/5 of a second, light has already traveled about 60,000 kilometers. The Earth has rotated about 100 meters at the equator. Your blood has completed perhaps a quarter of a heartbeat's journey through your body. But it's not just vision that lags behind reality. Every sense you have operates with its own delay. Sound waves traveling through air move much slower than light, crawling along at about 343 meters per second. When someone speaks to you from across a room, their words reach your ears milliseconds after their lips moved. Your brain then needs another 50 to 100 milliseconds to process those sound waves into meaningful speech. Touch seems instantaneous, doesn't it? When you press your finger against something, you feel it immediately, but even this is an illusion. The nerve signals from your fingertip travel to your brain at speeds between 2 and 120 meters per second, depending on the type of nerve fiber. A touch on your toe takes noticeably longer to register than a touch on your nose, though your brain cleverly masks this difference, creating the illusion of simultaneity. Neuroscientists have discovered something even more fascinating about how our brains handle all these different delays. Rather than presenting us with a chaotic mixture of sensory information arriving at different times, our brains perform an incredible feat of temporal coordination. They actually hold back the faster signals, waiting for the slower ones to catch up, then present everything to our consciousness as a unified moment. This synchronized package of sensory experience is what we call the present, but it's really a carefully edited reconstruction of the recent past. Think about what this means for a moment. Your brain is constantly creating a story, weaving together threads of sensory information that arrive at different times, smoothing over the gaps, filling in the blanks, and presenting you with a seamless narrative of now. But this now is always behind, always catching up, never quite reaching the actual present moment. It's like watching a live television broadcast that claims to be happening right now, but is actually on a deliberate delay. Except in our case, we can never switch to the truly live feed. We are forever watching the delayed broadcast of reality. And yet, somehow, we navigate through the world successfully. We catch balls thrown at us. We dodge obstacles. We dance with partners, all while operating on this delayed information. How is this possible? Your brain, magnificent thing that it is, has developed predictive mechanisms. It doesn't just process the past, it anticipates the future. Based on the trajectory of that ball you see coming toward you, your brain calculates where it will be by the time your hand moves to catch it. You're not really catching the ball you see. You're catching the ball your brain predicts will be there. This predictive processing happens constantly, unconsciously, turning you into a living fortune teller of the immediate future. When you walk, your brain predicts where your foot will land. When you reach for a cup of coffee, your brain calculates not where the cup is now in your visual field, but where it will be when your hand arrives. We live in a world of educated guesses, of probabilistic models, of anticipated futures based on processed pasts. The present moment, that infinitesimally thin slice between past and future, remains forever out of reach. Scientists have conducted fascinating experiments to explore this temporal displacement. In one famous study, participants were asked to press a button that would cause a light to flash. Under normal circumstances, people perceive the light as flashing the moment they decided to press the button. But researchers could introduce a tiny delay, just a few milliseconds, between the button press and the flash. At first, participants noticed this delay, but here's where it gets strange. After repeated trials, their brains adapted. They began to perceive the flash as simultaneous with their action again, even though the delay was still there. Their brains had literally recalibrated their perception of time to maintain the illusion of living in the present. But then the researchers removed the delay. Now the flash actually did occur simultaneously with the button press. But the participants' brains, still calibrated for the delay, perceived the flash as happening before they pressed the button. They experienced an effect preceding its cause, a violation of the fundamental order of events, all because their brains were trying to construct a coherent present moment from temporally scattered information. This might sound disturbing, and perhaps it is. We're not experiencing reality as it unfolds. We're experiencing our brain's best guess about what reality was like a fraction of a second ago. Every moment of your conscious experience is a memory, albeit a very fresh one. You've never experienced now, you've only experienced then, dressed up as now by your magnificent deceiving brain. But let's float deeper into this mystery, because it gets even stranger when we consider what physicists tell us about time itself. In Einstein's relativity, the concept of now becomes even more slippery. There is no universal present moment that exists across the universe. What counts as now for you might be the future or the past for someone moving relative to you at high speed or experiencing a different gravitational field. The present moment isn't just elusive. According to physics, it might not even exist as a definable instant that stretches across space. Imagine an alien civilization in a distant galaxy, 4 million light-years away. If they had an impossibly powerful telescope pointed at Earth right now, what would they see? They'd see our planet as it was 4 million years ago, when our early ancestors were just beginning to walk upright. And if we could see them right now, we'd see their world as it was 4 million years in their past. But here's the mind-bending part. There's no objective way to say what's happening on their planet right now, in any absolute sense. The concept of simultaneity, of things happening at the same time, breaks down across cosmic distances. Even here on Earth, on much smaller scales, this relativity of simultaneity still applies. GPS satellites orbiting above us experience time at a slightly different rate than we do on the surface, due to their speed and the difference in gravitational field. Their clocks tick about 38 microseconds faster per day than Earth-based clocks. Engineers must account for this, or your GPS would accumulate errors of about 10 kilometers per day. The present moment for a GPS satellite is literally different from your present moment, even though the difference is tiny. So we return to you, lying there, listening to these words, existing in what you call the present. But what present? The visual present, where you see things as they were 100 milliseconds ago? The auditory present, which lags behind by a different amount? The tactile present, processed at yet another speed? Or perhaps the psychological present, that strange duration that psychologists tell us lasts about 2 to 3 seconds, during which events feel like they're happening now rather than then. William James, the great psychologist and philosopher, called this the specious present. Specious meaning false or deceiving. He understood over a century ago that our sense of the present is not a knife edge between past and future, but rather a duration, a small window of time that our consciousness holds together and calls now. It's like a moving window, always sliding forward, always containing a mix of what just happened and what's about to happen, never quite capturing that infinitesimal point we imagine as the true present. Think about listening to music. You don't hear one note at a time, disconnected from what came before and what comes after. You hear melodies, phrases, rhythms that extend across time. A single note means nothing without its context, without the notes that preceded it, and your anticipation of the notes to come. Your brain holds several seconds of music in this specious present, allowing you to experience not just sound, but music. The present moment for consciousness is always thick with the immediate past and pregnant with the immediate future. And perhaps this is necessary. Perhaps a true present moment, an infinitesimally thin instant with no duration, would be meaningless to consciousness. How could you understand anything in a pure now with no temporal extent? How could you perceive motion, understand speech, recognize patterns, or have any thoughts at all? Thought itself requires time, the flow from one state to another. A frozen instant would contain no experience, no awareness, no life as we know it. Yet still, we feel disturbed by this revelation that we can never touch the present. We want to believe we're living in the now, experiencing reality as it happens. There's something unsettling about knowing that everything we perceive is already past, that our consciousness lags behind the universe, that we're forever watching a delayed replay of existence. It challenges our most basic intuitions about what it means to be aware, to be present, to be alive. But here, in the quiet space between acceptance and understanding, something beautiful emerges. Yes, we're always experiencing the past, but we're predicting the future. Yes, our senses deliver information at different speeds, but our brains weave them into a coherent story. Yes, the present moment is an illusion, but it's an illusion that allows consciousness to exist, to make sense of the flow of time, to create meaning from the chaos of sensory data flooding in from the world. Consider how remarkable it is that your brain performs this feat every second of your waking life, and even during your dreams. Billions of neurons fire in intricate patterns, processing, predicting, constructing your experience of reality. The delay, the lag, the inability to grasp the true present, these aren't flaws in the system. They're the necessary conditions for consciousness as we know it. Without the processing time, without the predictive models, without the specious present that extends across time, there would be no experience at all, just raw, meaningless data. And think about what this means for free will, for decision-making, for the nature of consciousness itself. Scientists have discovered that they can detect the brain activity associated with a decision several hundred milliseconds before a person reports being aware of deciding. Your brain begins to execute an action before you consciously decide to perform it. The conscious experience of choosing comes after the choice has already been initiated in the unconscious machinery of your brain. Even your sense of being the author of your actions arrives late to the party. A story your brain tells you about what it has already begun to do. This might seem to reduce us to biological robots, slaves to our neural processes, always behind the curve of our own existence. But perhaps there's another way to see it. Perhaps consciousness isn't meant to be in the present moment at all. Perhaps its role is to be the storyteller, the meaning maker, the pattern recognizer that makes sense of the flow of events after they have happened. We are not present moment experiencers. We are historians of the immediate past and prophets of the immediate future, weaving stories that allow us to navigate through a reality we can never quite catch up to. The delay also serves protective functions. If you experienced every sensory input the instant it reached your nervous system, without processing, without integration, without the brain's careful editing, the world would be chaos. You'd be overwhelmed by a cacophony of unsynchronized signals, unable to form coherent perceptions or thoughts. The delay allows your brain to filter, organize, prioritize, and present you with a useful model of reality rather than reality itself. You don't need to experience the actual present moment. You need to experience a coherent, meaningful interpretation of recent events that allows you to function. And function we do remarkably well. Despite never experiencing the true present, humans have built civilizations, created art, fallen in love, explored the cosmos, and even discovered that we can't experience the present. The delay doesn't diminish us, it defines us. It's part of what makes consciousness possible, what allows for the rich subjective experience of being alive. Think about athletes performing at the peak of their abilities. A baseball player hitting a fastball has about 400 milliseconds from the time the ball leaves the pitcher's hand until it crosses the plate. Given the processing delays we've discussed, by the time the batter sees the ball clearly, a significant portion of its journey is already complete. They're not really hitting the ball they see, they're hitting where their brain predicts the ball will be. They're living in an anticipated future, their bodies moving based on unconscious calculations, their conscious experience trailing behind, witnessing their own actions after they've already begun. Or consider a pianist playing a complex piece. Their fingers move faster than conscious thought can direct them. The conscious mind experiences the music being played, but the playing itself emerges from deeper, faster processes. The pianist's consciousness is audience to their own performance, experiencing what their unconscious mind and trained muscles have already set in motion. They live in the wake of their own actions, surfing the edge between past and future, never quite in the present. This extends to all of us in every moment. When you speak, your words are formed and begun before you're consciously aware of exactly what you're about to say. When you walk, each step is initiated before you consciously experience deciding to take it. We are all performers and audience to our own lives, simultaneously acting and watching ourselves act, creating and experiencing, but never quite in sync with the actual moment of action. The mystics and meditators who speak of being present or living in the now are perhaps touching on something different than the literal present moment. Maybe what they're describing is an acceptance of this flow, a harmony with the fact that consciousness surfs the edge of time rather than inhabiting a specific instant. Being present might mean not trying to grasp the ungraspable now, but rather flowing with the stream of experience, accepting the delay, embracing the predictive nature of perception. In meditation, practitioners often focus on the breath, watching it come and go. But even this simple act involves all the delays we've discussed. The sensation of air entering your nostrils, the feeling of your chest rising, the awareness of exhalation, all of these arrive at consciousness at different times, processed and packaged into the experience of breathing. Yet in accepting this, in not fighting for an impossible immediacy, there's peace. The present moment was never there to be grasped anyway. As we drift deeper into this contemplation, consider the stars again. Every point of light in the night sky is a message from the past, some from hundreds of years ago, some from millions. The night sky is a temporal collage, each star showing itself as it was at a different moment in history. And yet we see them all together, our brain presenting them as a unified view of now, even though no such now exists for all those stars simultaneously. This is perhaps the deepest truth about our perception of time. We don't experience time, we construct it. Our brains create the feeling of flowing from past through present to future. But this is our interpretation, our story, our way of making sense of something much stranger. Physics suggests that all moments might exist simultaneously in a four-dimensional space-time, with our consciousness somehow constrained to experience them sequentially. The present moment isn't special in any objective sense. It's just where our awareness happens to find itself. Some physicists speak of the block universe, where past, present, and future all exist eternally, like frames in an infinite film reel. In this view, the present moment is just the frame our consciousness is currently experiencing, but all the other frames, all the past moments and future moments, exist just as fully. We can never see the present moment because we're inside it, part of it, inseparable from it. It's like asking an eye to see itself without a mirror, or asking a thought to think itself without the passage of time. And what about memory? When you remember something, your brain isn't retrieving a file, it's reconstructing an experience, rebuilding it from scattered neural patterns. And this reconstruction happens in the present, or rather, in your brain's constructed present, which as we know is already the past. So even your memories are processed through the same delayed systems, the same predictive mechanisms. You remember the past through the lens of a present that is itself already past. Layers upon layers of temporal displacement, and yet somehow, miraculously, it all feels coherent, continuous, real. Dreams show us another facet of this temporal mystery. In dreams, time behaves even more strangely. You might experience hours, days, even years in a dream that lasts only minutes. Your brain, freed from the constraints of external sensory input, creates its own temporal flow, and often in dreams, cause and effect become scrambled. You might dream of someone calling your name, only to wake and realize it was your alarm clock that your brain wove into the dream narrative retroactively. The dream present is even more constructed, even more illusory than our waking present. But if dreams show us time untethered, they also reveal something about the nature of consciousness. Even in dreams, where there's no actual sensory input to process, no real events to lag behind, we still experience a flow of time, still feel ourselves moving from moment to moment. This suggests that the feeling of temporal flow, of present moments giving way to new present moments, is fundamental to consciousness itself, not just a product of processing delays. Studies of patients with certain types of brain damage provide more clues about our construction of the present. Some patients lose the ability to form new memories, living in a permanent present that lasts only seconds. Others experience temporal disintegration, where the usual binding of moments into a continuous stream breaks down. These conditions, though tragic, show us how much work our brains do to create the illusion of a smooth, continuous present from the fragmented, delayed inputs of our senses. There's a condition called chronostasis, where time seems to stop briefly. You've probably experienced this when glancing at a clock. The second hand seems to freeze for longer than a second before continuing its motion. This happens because when your eyes move rapidly, your vision is suppressed to prevent blur. Your brain then backfills the gap, extending your perception of the first thing you see after the eye movement. For a moment, your brain holds time still, stretching the present to cover the gap in sensory input. Or consider the stopped clock illusion, where a broken clock showing the correct time twice a day seems to be working for that instant. Your brain, expecting motion, interprets stillness as a prolonged present moment. These illusions reveal how actively our brains construct our experience of now, how the present moment is more of a creative act than a passive perception. The speed of thought itself adds another layer to this mystery. Neurons fire, synapses transmit signals, but all of this takes time. A thought isn't instantaneous. It unfolds across milliseconds or seconds. So even our contemplation of the present moment is smeared across time. The beginning of a thought exists in a different moment than its end. We think about the present, but the thinking itself is a temporal process that cannot exist in a single instant. And what about attention? Neuroscientists have discovered that attention isn't continuous, but rather samples the world in discrete snapshots, several times per second. Like a movie creating the illusion of motion from still frames, your brain creates the feeling of continuous experience from these attentional snapshots. Between the snapshots, you're essentially blind, but your brain fills in the gap so seamlessly that you never notice. The present moment for your attention is a series of discrete samples, not a continuous flow. This sampling rate varies depending on what you're doing, how alert you are, what you're paying attention to. In moments of extreme danger or focus, the sampling rate increases, which might be why time seems to slow down in these situations. You're not experiencing more time, you're sampling it more frequently, creating more snapshots, more discrete present moments in the same duration. The athlete in the zone, the person in a car accident, the meditator in deep concentration, they all experience alterations in their brain's construction of the present moment. But let's return to you, still lying there, still listening, still existing in this constructed present that isn't really present at all. What does it feel like to know this? Does it change your experience, knowing that you're always living in the past, always predicting the future, never touching the actual now? Or does the experience remain the same, just with a new understanding layered on top? Perhaps the disturbing nature of this revelation fades when we realize that everyone, everything exists in the same situation. Every conscious being is experiencing their own delayed, processed, constructed version of reality. We're all living in our own slightly different pasts, our brains all performing the same magic trick of creating coherent experience from chaos. In a sense, we're all time travelers, moving forward at 1 second per second through our own subjective timelines, never quite in sync with the universe or each other, but somehow managing to connect, communicate, and share experiences despite the temporal displacement. The delay might even be necessary for consciousness to exist at all. Imagine if you could somehow experience the true present moment, with no processing delay, no integration, no prediction. It would be like experiencing raw data with no interpretation, meaningless, chaotic, overwhelming. The delay, the processing, the construction of a subjective present. These aren't bugs in the system, they're features. They're what allow for experience, understanding, meaning. Some philosophers have argued that consciousness itself is what creates time, not the other way around. Without conscious observers to experience change, to remember the past and anticipate the future, would time exist at all? Or would the universe simply be, all moments coexisting eternally, with no flow, no present, no past or future? In this view, our inability to experience the true present isn't a limitation. It's what brings time into being in the first place. Think about photography for a moment. A photograph captures light from a scene, but by the time you look at the photo, you're seeing light that bounced off objects in the past. Every photograph is a historical document, even if taken a second ago. But we don't usually think of photos as showing the past. We think of them as showing moments, captured presents. Similarly, our consciousness is like a continuous photograph, always showing scenes from moments ago, but feeling like now. And what about the future? If we're always experiencing the past, always predicting the future, where does that leave free will? Are we choosing our actions, or are we simply becoming aware of choices our brains have already made? The scientific evidence suggests that many of our decisions are initiated unconsciously, with our experience of choosing coming after the fact. But perhaps this doesn't eliminate free will so much as relocate it. Perhaps free will operates not in the impossible present moment, but in the ongoing process of prediction, adjustment, and meaning-making that consciousness performs. Your brain is constantly generating models of what might happen next, and these models influence what actually does happen. The future you predict influences the past you experience. It's a loop, a dance between anticipation and memory, with the present moment as the ever-elusive space where they meet, but never quite touch. You're both the author and the reader of your own story, writing it and reading it simultaneously, but with a slight delay that makes you feel like the reader even as you write. This brings us to perhaps the most profound aspect of our temporal displacement, creativity, and imagination. When you imagine something, when you create something new, when you have an original thought, where does it come from? It seems to appear in consciousness already formed, or at least already forming. The creative moment, the instant of inspiration, has already occurred by the time you experience it. You witness your own creativity after the fact, marveling at ideas that seem to come from nowhere, but must have been generated by the unconscious processes of your brain. Artists often speak of being channels for their work, of watching their creations emerge without conscious control. Writers describe characters who seem to write themselves. Painters speak of paintings that paint themselves. Perhaps this feeling comes from the temporal delay, from experiencing their creative decisions after their brains have already made them. The muse, the creative spirit, might simply be the unconscious mind working faster than consciousness can follow, with awareness always trailing behind, witnessing the birth of ideas it feels it didn't create. Music shows this beautifully. A jazz musician improvising doesn't consciously decide each note before playing it. The decisions happen faster than conscious thought, with awareness experiencing the music as it emerges. The musician is simultaneously performer and audience, creating and experiencing but never quite in control of the present moment of creation. The music exists in that impossible present, while consciousness experiences it from the familiar territory of the immediate past. And what about conversation, like the one we're having now, even though it's one-sided? When you speak spontaneously, words form and flow without conscious planning of each syllable, each grammatical construction. Your brain assembles language faster than consciousness can track, and you often discover what you're saying as you say it. You're listening to yourself speak, just slightly behind the actual moment of speech, witnessing your own thoughts becoming words, becoming sounds, becoming meaning. This extends to all forms of communication. When you write, even when you think you're carefully choosing each word, the choices are often made before conscious deliberation. The word appears in your mind, feeling right or wrong, and you accept or reject it. But where did it come from? From unconscious processes operating in their own temporal flow, ahead of conscious awareness. You're reading your own thoughts as you think them, always a step behind your own mind. Consider the implications for relationships, for love, for human connection. When you look into someone's eyes, you're each seeing the other as they were moments ago. When you touch, the sensation reaches each of your brains at different times. You're never quite synchronized, never experiencing the exact same present moment. And yet, somehow, you connect. The feeling of connection transcends the temporal displacement, creating shared meaning from separate, delayed experiences. Perhaps this is what intimacy really is, not sharing the same present moment, which is impossible, but overlapping our constructed presence closely enough to feel together. We synchronize our predictions, align our expectations, and create a shared narrative of now, even though each of our nows is different, delayed, constructed. Love might be the agreement to pretend we're in the same moment, even though physics and neuroscience tell us we never can be. Even the sense of self, of being a continuous person through time, depends on this temporal construction. You feel like the same person you were yesterday, last year, in childhood, but this feeling is created by memory, by the brain's ability to connect past experiences into a coherent narrative. And this narrative is always being revised, always being updated with new experiences that themselves are already past by the time they're integrated into your sense of self. The self, like the present moment, is a construction, a story, a necessary illusion that allows consciousness to function. You're always becoming yourself, never quite being yourself, because being would require a present moment that doesn't exist. Instead, you're a process, a flow, a pattern that persists through time without ever existing completely in any single instant. This might sound like we're dissolving into nothingness, losing our grip on reality, but perhaps it's the opposite. Perhaps understanding that the present is always past, that consciousness is always catching up, that we're all temporal constructions rather than fixed entities. Perhaps this understanding is liberating. It means we're not failing to live in the present. We're succeeding at living in the only way consciousness can, surfing the edge of time, predicting and remembering, creating meaning from the flow. And as we near the end of our journey through this temporal mystery, consider one more aspect, the role of expectation and belief in shaping our experience of time. Studies have shown that our expectations literally influence our perceptions. If you expect something to happen, your brain begins preparing for it, sometimes even creating the sensation before the stimulus arrives. The placebo effect, where believing a treatment will work makes it work, shows how powerfully our predictions shape our reality. This means that our experience of the present isn't just delayed and constructed. It's also anticipated and believed into being. We don't just process the past, we create the future and experience it as the present. The moment you're experiencing right now is partly what happened moments ago, partly what you expect to happen moments from now, all woven together into the feeling of now. Time, as we experience it, is perhaps the greatest creative act of consciousness. Every moment is a small work of art, crafted by your brain from the raw materials of sensory input, memory, and prediction. The present moment isn't something we fail to grasp. It's something we successfully create, over and over, millions of times throughout our lives. Each constructed present is unique to each conscious being, a private screening of reality that no one else can ever quite share. And yet, despite each of us living in our own temporal bubble, our own delayed and constructed present, we manage to create shared culture, shared meaning, shared experiences. We tell stories that others understand, create music that moves people, build societies, fall in love, dream together about futures that haven't happened yet. The impossibility of sharing the present moment doesn't isolate us. It might be what makes connection so precious when it happens. Think about it. If we could all access some objective present moment, if we all experienced exactly the same now, would consciousness as we know it exist? Would there be individuality, creativity, different perspectives? The delay, the subjectivity, the construction of our own presence, these might be what allow for the rich diversity of conscious experience, for the possibility of seeing the world through different eyes, even if those eyes are all looking at slightly different times. The disturbing reason we can never see the present moment turns out to be the same reason consciousness exists at all. We are temporal beings, extended through time rather than existing in instants. Our inability to grasp the present is our ability to experience duration, change, music, language, thought, and life itself. We are not present moment perceivers. We are time weavers, storytellers, pattern finders, meaning makers. As you lie there, listening to these final words, you're experiencing them as they were recorded in the past, processed through your device, traveling as sound waves through air, entering your ears, being transformed into neural signals, integrated with your ongoing thoughts, and finally emerging in your consciousness as understanding. This entire chain of events takes time, and by the time you understand these words, the moment of their speaking is long past. And yet, here we are, connected across time and space, sharing ideas, exploring mysteries together. The present moment was never there to be caught. It was always a horizon, always receding, always just out of reach. But in chasing it, in trying to understand it, we've discovered something perhaps more beautiful, that consciousness is not a prisoner of the present but a dancer with time, creating experience from the interplay of memory and anticipation, past and future, what was and what might be. Your brain, right now, is performing its ancient magic, taking the delayed signals of the world and weaving them into the feeling of being alive, aware, present. It's predicting what will happen next, comparing those predictions with what does happen, updating its models, creating your experience. You're not falling behind. You're keeping pace with the only timeline that matters, your own subjective flow through existence. And perhaps this is enough. Perhaps it doesn't matter that we can't touch the true present, that we're always experiencing echoes and predictions rather than the thing itself. What matters is that we experience at all, that consciousness has found a way to exist despite the constraints of physics and neurology. We are time's way of experiencing itself, always delayed, always constructing, always flowing toward a future that becomes past before we can grasp it. As you drift closer to sleep, your brain will continue this process, even in dreams. Time will become even more fluid, even less connected to any objective present. You'll experience adventures that never happened, in places that don't exist, with people who might be composites of everyone you've ever known. And through it all, your brain will maintain the illusion of present moments, of now, following now, even though none of these nows correspond to anything in the external world. But when you wake, whether in a few hours or after a full night's rest, you'll return to this constructed present, this beautiful illusion that allows you to function, to think, to feel, to be. You'll open your eyes and see the world as it was milliseconds ago. You'll hear sounds that have already finished being made. You'll think thoughts that have already begun before you're aware of thinking them, and it will all feel perfectly present, perfectly now, because that's the only way consciousness knows how to be. The disturbing reason we can never see the present moment is also the comforting reason we can experience anything at all. We are not trapped in the past or racing toward the future. We are creating our own temporal experience, moment by constructed moment, weaving the threads of sensation and prediction into the tapestry of consciousness. The present moment isn't something we've lost. It's something we never had, never needed, because we have something better, the ability to create meaning from the flow of time. So rest now, knowing that your brain will continue its miraculous work of constructing your experience even as you sleep. Let go of the need to grasp the present moment. It was never there to be grasped anyway. Instead, float in this constructed now, this beautiful illusion that makes consciousness possible. You're exactly when you need to be, not in the present, not in the past, but in the ongoing creative act of experiencing time. The universe continues its work, atoms vibrating, light traveling, time flowing in its mysterious way. And you are part of this, your consciousness a small but significant eddy in the stream of time, experiencing what has already happened as if it's happening now, predicting what will happen as if you're choosing it, being human in the only way possible, delayed, constructed, but undeniably miraculously aware. And as you drift into sleep, you remain part of this quiet universe, wrapped in its laws, carried by its mysteries, your consciousness still constructing presents from pasts, still predicting futures that become past before they arrive, still performing the endless, beautiful, necessary illusion of being in the moment. The present moment remains forever out of reach, and that's exactly as it should be, must be, for you to exist at all. In the silence between heartbeats, in the pause between breaths, in the space between then and when, you continue being, not in the present, but in the flowing construction of experience that we call consciousness, that we call being alive, that we call now, even though it never really is, and that's perfectly, peacefully, gently okay. End.